I call this Board of Trustees work study of the Carrollton-Farmers Branch ISD Board of Trustees to order at 6:00 p.m. on September 11th, 2023. For the record, board members present are Tara Herbachik, Sally Derrick, Carolyn Benavides, Kim Brady, Ileana Garza Rojas, Randy Shackman, and myself, Cassandra Hatfield. We constitute a quorum and may conduct business on behalf of the district. The next item is audience for guests. Persons who wish to speak during audience for guests must have completed a form for this purpose and placed it in the designated location prior to the opening of the meeting. Ms. Canada, do we have anyone wishing to speak? Okay, with no one wishing to speak, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is item number 3, our work study or discussion items, which tonight we're going to be discussing possible edits to the board operating procedures. So I want to first thank the committee that came together to work on the board operating procedures, Mr. Shackman, Ms. Benavides, and Ms. Herbachik, for working together after each individual board member had a chance to look at it individually and make some suggestions. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Herbachik.
Thank you. And then I need to also extend our thanks to Mr. Marsh and Ms. Canada for their support. Ms. Canada had the difficult task of combining all of the edits and then tracking our comments in the subcommittee meeting, which might not have been the easiest to follow. But she got it. So as Ms. Hatfield said, the committee was myself, Ms. Benavides, and Mr. Shackman. And, we started with, and for the board, just as a reminder, the operating procedures are essentially the game plan for the Board of Trustees. They're intended as a document to kind of expand on our rules and processes as a board, how we want to operate, and therefore the protection of, individual board members, the board as a whole, and the district, to make sure that we don't do anything, wrong or to harm the district or our students and campuses. So as a general comment, like I said, Ms. Canada had pulled together all of the comments from each individual board member, and they're arranged different sections. When we first started reviewing, there was, I think, consensus, and Randy and Carol, if I misrepresent anything, jump in, please, that we felt the operating procedures were too lengthy and that there was too much policy in the operating procedures and that it was a duplication of things that could lead to confusion because, as if a new board member or existing board members are coming in and looking at the operating procedures, there was policy statements in our operating procedures. There was reference to policy. Sometimes they didn't match. And for ease of later edits, if there's a policy update, that doesn't, we would have to do a cursory review of the operating procedures to see if there was anything procedurally that would change for us, but we wouldn't have to update the operating procedures, with a change in policy so that there were no conflicts. So that kind of put us onto a path for a second meeting because as we started to review all the comments, we realized some of the comments might have been about policy items. So we're like, no sense in looking at those. We'll save those from a policy standpoint. Let's clean it up. And so that was when the work came in of removing things that was all policy. And so that's why you see a shortened document in front of you. And then as we walked through the comments from each board member and we reviewed every single one and considered every single one and how that was going to come into play, there were several sections that we as a subcommittee felt, yes, we could review and make a decision, but we really felt it was from a context needing from the whole board. They were significant items. And those sections are the reauthorization of operating procedures, since it is our governing document. We wanted input, review of goals and programs, general communications, a piece on complaints. We need to discuss a social media section. Almost all board members recommended that we include a social media section, but we really want to get, what's our intent with that in our operating procedures? Do we need to just defer to employee handbook information rules? What do we need to do? And that, again, for the protection. And then also the section on evaluating the superintendent. These are not heavy, or I don't believe most of these are heavy, in-depth discussion. It was more, if we wanted to tweak something, it almost changed the whole kind of, I don't know what the word is, idea of what the board wanted, and so we just felt it was better discussed with you all. So those are the sections that we want to focus on first, and then if there's any other specific section that y'all saw or that you want to review of what we've presented, then that's what we would do. Randy, Carolyn, did I?
Yes. I think that's good.
Okay. So let me get to the first, and this is what is printed in front of you is what is on the screen. And so the first one on the reauthorization of board operating procedures, this is a very small statement, but this was a really in-depth review. We went line by line, every word, everything. And we, as the subcommittee, we just don't feel like that's the effort that should happen every year, because by the time you get it done, it's going to start again. And so, we wanted to discuss how often y'all felt, every other year, unless there's a change from a legal or a policy standpoint that pushes a change. So we just wanted, y'all's thoughts.
Board members?
I think it's at least every other year, if not every 3 years.
I agree with that.
I mean, that's a lot of work.
You guys put in a lot of time and a lot of effort to do it every single year. It's a lot of work.
Well, and I feel like now that we've got, and this is my opinion, not from the subcommittee, now that we've got the policy out of it, there's less, these are our rules, not the legal, those kind of, the policy items included. So I wouldn't expect that another subcommittee or another round would have to do a line-by-line review like this again. I don't know, unless y'all feel differently. Every other year, I think that's sufficient.
I think every other year is sufficient. The August date does concern me a little bit, just because typically in the summer, we take it a little bit easier. And so when I was mapping this out, I was thinking, well, if we're gonna do an August date, we actually need to start in like April for the biannual, unless it's gonna be begin review by August, or back it up a little bit to like October, just because you can see, even if we're doing it biannually, it takes a couple of months by the time it goes through the whole process. I did like the process that we used this time, where each individual got to just make notes, because I think it made it pretty seamless, or at least it appeared very seamless. I know it's not seamless, but now that we've cleaned it up, I think it will flow a lot easier. So I'm good with biannual. I just would like for us to think about the month, or how we word that, so that it doesn't make the president feel like they're on the hook to get something done by that month.
Did it ever correspond with the beginning of our fiscal year?
No, and I don't think they're related. What I do think it relates to is elections, because if you have a new board member coming on in June, I think they need, to get through an SLI, any kind of training, kind of get your feet wet reading the operating procedures. So, I say maybe, start in September, maybe, because then you're back to our meetings of end of July, August, all of our meetings, to where you could get people back in the rhythm of reviewing. So starting in September, maybe.
Or November? October, November?
There's some thought that says biannual would connect to when the legislature meets. Don't think that there are a lot of things that would not be in policy, but the legislature, if they suddenly said you were gonna have 8 board members instead of 7,
That's extreme, but I got it, yeah.
Yeah. And so that was one thought on that, to say, what if it was in the years that the legislature was doing something?
and as they wrap up.
And then can we also just confirm that nothing has changed from a policy standpoint? Because for the past 4 years, it has been done annually. So I just want to make sure that there's nothing somewhere else that says you have to do it annually.
Well, just to preface, when I came on board, it hadn't been touched in like 12 years.
Right, well,
So-
it's got like 2013
I
to
don't know that-
2019. But just in case something did change in 2019 that led the board to do it annually. But agreed, biannually, so long as there's nothing that says we have to do it annually.
I don't remember that there was a legal statute
I
that,
don't think there is.
I don't
but
think there is. I think we define that, but
Well, I think the other important thing to note is if it goes to every other year, that's not stopping the board from ever reviewing
Initiating
in
it.
between. If two board members decide, hey, there's something in here that's really not right, they can ask that that be put on an agenda for discussion. So
Agreed.
there's always that level of protection in there.
So maybe we include that in the statement too, biannually, legislative years.
election, if it were, I mean,
Mhm.
that would work if we did it after an election. But everyone's okay with a biannual, not every, I just don't think it's it's my opinion that it's not necessary to do that kind of review.
And so we're changing no later than August to September?
Well, we'd have to look at legislative dates, and matching it. We would start the next review at the end of, what are we on, 89th legislative session?
Next
And
one
that would be in 25, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and then, let me back up. It's my assumption that we're gonna kind of take the comments from, the board, and then the subcommittee will go back. We'll tweak it and then get it back. Is that good?
I think our goal is to be able to approve it in the October meeting if possible.
I think we're good.
September?
Yeah.
The 1st of October?
Okay, so all comments, we're good on that? Okay, thank you. So the review of goals and programs, and this is again talking about a review timeline. The board will annually review and reaffirm or revise the district's vision, mission, and goals. That's kind of our district stated. Now, it's my recollection we haven't done anything to review since we set them last. Vision, mission. Now, we'll go into that word goals, which is bothering me right now. I mean, because which goals are we talking about? What are we talking about? So, there was a lot of work, it's not hanging in, a lot of messaging and communication on our mission, vision, and goal, those high level items from the district. I don't know that that's an annual. I mean, we're gonna set everything, all of our plans and forward thinking off of those items as we move forward. And so if you're gonna review them, okay, or reaffirm, but changing them again, that changes, that's supposed to be our guiding direction.
Well, and maybe if you look at page 20 in the board operating procedures, it's mission, vision, motto, and beliefs, which feels very different than mission, vision, and goals.
Yeah.
So maybe that's part of the shift here, is that we would affirm if we need to affirm it. But how often do mission, visions, mottos get redone? And this was done as a part of CB 2030, right?
Yep. And then we haven't, not that I'm saying we needed to or should, but I mean, they're great mission. I mean, I believe in them, I think we all do, but I don't know if we need to review them annually. And maybe it's the change of that, because this section, and not to combine the discussions, but the next one is, at the same time it does it, the board will evaluate their performance using, and we're going to determine which board self-evaluation tool, that might be annual, that should be annually. We should review our performance, but then separating from the district mission.
It feels like it needs to be two separate if we want to affirm it every year. Do we need to affirm it every year?
Just as a reminder.
It's a good reminder.
The only thing that an affirmation does is it reminds us, it communicates that this is our plan, this is our path, and, a reminder, but I just don't think a full revision is there. So if we need to change it.
So change the title heading and make it affirming, reaffirming.
And I think the word goals and programs is maybe change the title of that, because I think that's,
Confusing.
It's confusing.
Confused me.
you know what? Which goals? We've got a lot of goals.
Yes. I think it should match the page 20, CFBISD mission, vision, and motto. Because
Oh, yeah.
programs is completely different. Like the board gets updates on programs and departments monthly on an annual calendar. That's completely different
And it
than
doesn't even
this.
talk about programs.
It doesn't even talk about programs, that's right. And then maybe we just cut goals out of it for now. Dr. Eldridge is planning on bringing us up to speed on all of the various goals. And I think that will help us think about goals.
Well, I think we could leave out the word goals, but I believe it's important that we do have the self-evaluation in here. So whether it's, and we're going to determine what that's, what are we looking at, from there. I don't think the self-evaluation should go away.
Do you think that needs to have its own title, though?
I think separate it from,
Yeah. So
rev-
what are you changing the review of goals and programs? What are you thinking?
We were the CFBI mission, vision, and motto.
You say review,
Mhm.
CFB
Review of
mission, yeah.
mission, vision, and motto.
And then another header
Section.
that's board self-evaluation.
I think so.
And the goals is being removed from the
Okay,
section.
so review of,
mission, vision, and motto.
Like page
okay,
20.
that's one, and then on the second one, we're gonna do review of,
Board evaluation? Board self-evaluation? Board self-evaluation. Randy, Carolyn, do you remember any of the other discussions? I mean, that was it about that, right?
Yeah. 'Cause we just want to separate them, put them together.
And then will we review if that's actually got a policy reference anymore?
Yeah, all of those. And I think we'll, clarify that, maybe it's not a reference, it's more info can be found in policy, because anytime you state one, and that's the reference, if you miss one statement of a policy and don't have it in there, then that's room for, well, you didn't say.
I got, is that right? Policy, procedure review by or
Yeah.
legislative.
That's what we're.
Yes.
and then we're gonna keep and on the
Yeah, because now that we've changed it to remove kind of goals, I think that annually, because even if it's just, that way that opens to where we can reaffirm. And like everybody said, consensus was a reminder, which is always good. Okay, the next section was, that we wanted to discuss was on communications and just
Page 7.
general communications. Yeah, it's on page 7 of your section. And part of this is, we had, we've kind of changed how our communication is working. If there was anything in these operating procedures, we've now got our updates from Cass that Ms. Kim sends those out.
Canada.
You send
Kim
them out.
sent it because she-
Somebody sends them out. Okay. We receive them. I don't remember.
Magically.
That magically appear, for us. But whether there needed to be any changes or if there was something that was not working for board members, from that aspect. And I think that's what we said, right, Randy, Carolyn, that was just, we've changed so much in our communication protocols and differently, but we wanted to make sure that people felt like they were getting what they needed.
Their answers, yes.
There was also a big deletion that there was a request of records section in there, and that was covered elsewhere. It's also covered in policy, so that was taken out. But any other comments, concerns?
I have one question, and I think it may be under, actually, it's not, related to the agenda and meeting preparation, so maybe that's why it's not here. So never mind, I'll wait till the next point, the later point.
Well, and if there was, after the discussions, we could go to that. Just don't forget.
I won't.
Okay. I don't think there were any other concerns or discussions that we had, Randy, Carolyn, right, on that? It was just making sure that everybody with the new communication, if we needed to specify anything. And Brian, D, if I'm forgetting something, tell me. Okay. Yeah, sometimes my memory doesn't work, 100%. That's why it is. So another discussion was board member responses to community or employee complaints and and specifically related to anonymous. And I don't know that needs to be addressed specifically in here, as I think policy covers us on that.
Do you think we can just leave a section in, saying to redirect us to the policy? I know it almost sounds redundant, but what to do in the event of a situation of this sort?
It references who shall proceed according to the applicable complaint policy in the statement.
Yeah.
Were you saying take it in, or are you saying leave it, or are you saying take it out?
Leave it as is.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I was totally missed that.
Well, and the question was, do we need to address it? So that's kind of, what do y'all think?
I think it sticks with the policy, the way it's written. The only question is the very last, at the end, it says following board procedures. I think what you're saying is, it says the board member may request that it be placed on the agenda, we just need 2 board members.
Well, the board procedures would be to,
Okay,
or maybe we change it to following board operating procedures, because that's defined in here, how you get an item on the agenda.
okay. I think that's good, add the word operate, just
Okay.
so it's not, somebody doesn't think it's different procedures.
Okay. Randy, Carolyn, does that address?
Yeah, I've got all my notes.
Yes?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, moving on, the next section that we wanted to discuss with the board was almost every board member in their comments proposed some sort of social media guidelines or anything, but that's all it said, social media guidelines, and that's pretty broad. So really, if there's more context of, what we want to protect. Initially, we had discussions about referring back to the employee handbook and the same guidelines that employees are under. Or, what did we want to say? What did we want to say and what the intent was?
So I looked that up on the TASB website. Of course, they have their own section of what they see as pertinent to social media and school board members. So there's an option to look at that. It was only about 2 pages. It was only about 2 pages long. Their section. But we could put it in
I
more
just got rid
paragraphs.
of pages. We can't have that.
We could put it in a much smaller paragraph and just summarize what they had said in their blurb, which I had up, but now I've lost it. So I will pull it up
I
again.
mean, I think it's because it's so evolving and technology is so, that's why so many people have a page or two, just given how much we can use through social media or what we should say or do through social media, how we should represent ourselves through social media. Back in the day, it was newspaper. and That's not really popular anymore, it's social media. So that's just my perspective on social media.
I think from a
76 pages,
legal
7 pages.
perspective, we need to have some sort of guidelines. And it may mimic what the staff has been told, because if you ever follow social media of staff members, like either you're friends with them or whatever, like you can tell it's very intentional what they do or don't post.
Yes.
Because they know that there's something in writing that they are being held to. And I think that we need to have something similar in writing, because I think there needs to be guidelines around the protection of the children. Like, I look at this from a nurse standpoint. Like, I know I cannot post a picture at work of any of my patients. Like, that is against the law. And it's the same for schools.
I mean, as
We
a
can't
parent.
post pictures of children unless we have permission to do so, because the story is that kid could be in hiding from a parent that the family had, run from, or that child. There's a million
Could be a
examples.
dangerous situation.
We could potentially expose a child unknowingly to a very dangerous situation, and now they've been discovered in Carrollton-Farmers branch when they've been in hiding for
I do
years.
agree with that, just because as a parent, I don't even let my mother-in-law share pictures of my kids, because I'm so protective of who's sharing and what you're sharing. I mean, it's my kid, so I can't imagine that I'm the only parent that feels that way.
Well, and that's why as a parent in the district, you are asked at the beginning of every school year,
That's right.
you have to sign the waiver that says my child's
Right.
picture or name can be used in district advertisements. And if that is checked no, and the district does that, I mean, that's a huge, huge no-no.
Right, but as
And,
a
and as a board member, we don't know who's has that permission or not has that permission.
That's where I was going with that conversation.
Well, we need to balance it with, keeping our ability to share the good things and the positive things, from that aspect. And, whether that's defining separate pages or our rules. And I think that would be the guidance, what's in the employee handbook about kids.
You wrote down
What
employee
handbook?
handbook info for this.
Yeah.
guidelines.
And, this TASB is 11 pages.
11 pages.
I am not, I am not adding 11 pages back to.
It's very redundant, and, most of you just want to say, well, of course not. It's just, using your head. But,
But not everybody uses their head.
that's true. That is very true. Common sense, don't have that at all.
Okay, so without, drafting that here, and that I don't think we want to do that here. Let me make sure that Randy, me, and Carolyn understand that it's, documented in writing what protections we have to have in place that should probably exactly represent what employees can do. We can take a look at the TASB guidelines to see if there's anything we want to pull that's specific. Is there any, does that kind of highlight the intent or context of everybody's thoughts?
Yes, because I think we should be very intent, I guess having, be intentional of this is a board page and you are a representative of this district, and this is what you post as a representative. And then separate yourself from that profile. That's what I would
Yeah, it's
want,
very different if I go to my daughter's volleyball game and I take a picture of all her
Yes.
volleyball friends and I post versus I go to a district event as a board member and take a picture of a bunch of kids and now I've posted it because I'm acting as a district official and doing that. So I see the,
Confidentiality.
well, an employee may not share or post in any format information, videos, or pictures obtained while on duty or on district business unless the employee first obtains written approval from the employee's immediate supervisor. Employees should be cognizant that they have access to information and images that if transmitted to the public could violate privacy concerns. Like, I think that right there is a great statement of,
And that's where it comes in that when we reshare a district post or reshare a CFB page, we can have more confidence that that step has already been done.
Yes.
So there's value in resharing versus posting our own, especially if it's pictures in the schools.
Ileana, to your I mean, is that something that the board wants to require a separation, separate pages from personal to school board, or what are y'all's?
Separate pages, but for future, possible new board members, we would want that. I mean, I would want that, for there to be a distinction, like you're not gonna use your personal page, it'll be a professional page dedicated just to being a trustee. Because, again, going back to the social media thing, we tend to enmesh our worlds and just say, I'm one, this is my social media, I am this, I'm this, I'm this. But we want to be able to make sure we take care of our kids and protect our district in an aspect if anybody comes in the future and says, this is my trustee page, you know?
But I'm not sure we can require people to do that. Maybe you suggest people do that, but you can't require them to do that.
To separate their life from, or to have their
Their
own.
own social media page.
I don't think you can with like.
We can't require that, but you could certainly suggest it.
I mean, you could say, I don't know, what do you think?
well, I mean, I think if you have this in place, it needs to apply to whatever then. Like, if you're using your personal page as your district's page,
Okay.
then this is gonna apply to your personal page. There
I
should be a
agree.
clear distinction, like I would, at least I would hope that if you went to my personal page, it would not feel board-like. You know, it feels
I agree
very
with that.
personal, my family, my children, their friends. But if you go to my board page, that feels very professional. It feels very much like I'm in my other hat when I'm posting those things.
So you're unprofessional in your personal? I mean, did y'all hear that? Because that's what I heard.
Professional and my unprofessional page.
Well, and that, I mean, and I have the same thing. It's separated. My personal
But I
is
guess
locked
it's hard to
down.
define though, because what if, I mean, that's a matter of opinion. Like, I feel like I'm using my personal page in a very personal kind of
matter.
way, and someone could come in and say, but you're a school board member. I mean, I think that's hard. I have seen it where in your description, there's like a disclaimer.
It actually says that in
On
the,
the TASB one?
in the TASB one.
I have
It
seen
says
that where,
because the board president is the spokesperson and the board only acts as a body corporate. Many school boards have board operating procedure that appoints the board president as spokesman, and other board members are free to speak publicly about school matters, but should clarify their statements are written as their own views and not in the official of the board. So even if it
that's
is
on
your board
page,
page,
yeah.
you're still not in your official, because you can't speak on behalf of the board.
Do y'all think y'all have contacts that would, or, I hear, okay.
Do y'all have enough, sounded like 11 pages.
So, yeah, we would just pull highlights, visit that.
Yeah.
I mean, the guidelines for an employee handbook.
I
as
think it's
well.
going to be a mixture of kind of the comments here, seeing what we can grab from the TASB, from employee handbook, but I think I've got, do y'all, I mean, what the board is,
Could you
That's
say
what I wrote
something
down.
like, it is advised or encouraged that board members have a personal and a school board
Separate
designated?
professional.
So like
school
y'all are saying, it
board.
can't be required, but we could list it as like, it's highly encouraged.
And
So
it is
that-
to protect the person. I mean, again,
Oh,
we
for
all
sure.
have separate pages, but anybody else who's coming who may be more tech savvy or social media, I mean, you never know. So we're not setting the guidelines for now, we're setting the guidelines for 10 years from now.
And with the intent of protecting the individual board
Hmm.
member,
For 2 years.
the children, the district, like, it's all being done in a way to protect everyone.
And that's we don't want to break the rule. That's
Right.
the intent, that we don't want to break or harm students
Right.
or the district or the board as a whole.
I agree with that.
Anything?
But a part of this is just like, behaving like, again, with common sense, but you could just reference the, what the expected behavior of a school board member is not to promote the illegal use of drugs and alcohol on your social media page. Well, yeah, probably not the best thing to do, but we've already covered that in our, the behavior expected of a board member. So I'm just saying that there's lots of
Redundancy.
to spell out a lot
You're
of
gonna be able to
things.
take away some of those 11 pages, is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Okay.
certainly 5. I think you could easily get it down to 6.
One paragraph.
Y'all, let me go back to my original statements. Our intent was to simplify the document so that there was an ease of understanding and a new board member could be like, here are my rules. But if we need to, add, we'll add.
There's a lot of value in reading this document. Because the TASB one, it goes into cases, Attorney General, like, it's got some legit things in here that I think everybody should probably read. Because even if we boil it down to a paragraph in the board operating procedures, there's a lot of in-depth information about what we should consider. And they talk about a personal account and a campaign account, which is kind of interesting. Separate from a board.
Maybe that can go in the new
3?
board member binder.
I haven't had time to like fully read it, but
Okay.
that's why I'm saying we need to really read this.
Okay.
I guess the question I have is, what do we have in policy relates to this? Because policy always will take precedence.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we have policy, the statement here simply needs to basically say, refer to board policy XXX, whatever it is, it's got that in it.
Yeah.
Someone's done the job already.
Well,
But
it's the
with
same
changing
that what we
numbers.
were doing on the other sections with policy, if it's already, in there. And I think when we talked about this before, that it really went into the employee handbook specifics, not policy.
I have that down twice, employee handbook guidelines.
Yeah.
Your practice and ethical conduct. That's employees.
There's a lot of policies referenced at the bottom of this.
Yeah. Okay, we'll take that back. That might be the hardest one.
Or maybe there are some recommended policies that add on something about board members that need to be looked at, that would help clarify.
And I don't know the answer. I mean,
Again, better
Go
now
to-
than 2 years
yeah.
with ever-evolving social media.
And it could change in a year. Right?
I heard there's a new platform. I don't remember what it was.
That's it. So,
Okay, so we're on to evaluating the superintendent.
Yes. Okay, so the next section is evaluating the superintendent, and there's been a lot of, discussion overall on how we do this in our timeline. So really, Cass, I'm going to turn this back. I know I didn't tell you I was going to, but but it's just a discussion because this talks about the timeline, what we're going to be doing, the instrument, and whether we need to tweak anything in here to match what we've talked about before.
So, I think in looking at this section in general, our typical timeline has been to evaluate the superintendent in December and January. And with that, the formative evaluation is in December and the summative in January. And even Kay talked about it, at our last, when we had our priority workshop, that high-functioning boards typically do formative evaluations more than once a year because it's a great opportunity to collaborate and discuss the wonderful progress that's being made. And so that's one thing I think we should consider is identifying how frequently a formative evaluation would be helpful. That way it's not talked about is kind of the timeline and how it works. And I've been on the board for 3 years, almost, no, 2 years, 3 years. And during that time, we shifted a prior practice, and we went to the practice where individual board members got a copy of the evaluation tool, they filled in the ratings and the comments, and then we sat in a room collectively for I think 4 or 5 hours and collectively wrote joint comments and then a joint rating and then shared that with the superintendent. But I think something that's interesting that Dr. Eldridge shared with me in her history is that she's also had a collective presented. So it's one document shared by the board, but then the individual ones also get shared so that she can see what individual opinions are behind the scenes, in addition to the collective, but then also having a response to that. So being able to look at the comments and feedback and then have a presentation where she shares back additional information that could be helpful for the board based on the comments and questions that are asked. So I think that I don't want to get the board operating procedures right now like clearly defined, so clear, because we haven't gone through a cycle and how we want to operate this year. But I have been spending some time looking at the draft document that was the previous document that we most recently used and revising that. And in that, I have a proposed schedule and timeline. And I was hoping to share that with the board at the retreat so that you could see it as a template, as a starting place, and we could agree on a template. And that document would be saved as a template, and then we would pull out from there and add in the actual goals tied to whatever we want the goals to be. So I guess when I look at this, I want to be cautious not to like prescribe it so far down that we don't have any, we feel like we're tied to something with a little flexibility, because I think we're also in a unique situation now where we're required to evaluate the superintendent within 15 months by the Texas Education Code. So we need to do that, but we also want to do some short-term goals to support us getting up to speed on the information that she has and the goals and priorities that she's envisioning along with us before we go into a full year cycle. And so I'm envisioning kind of a short term and then a full cycle next year. And at that point, if we feel like we need to narrow down this section to have more specificity, we can, or we can also say refer to the evaluation document, which has the specificity. That was a lot.
Is it too much to ask you what you envision the timeline being at this point?
No. So I think that based on the priorities that we discussed at the priority workshop, that we need to give, well, we either have to have more meetings, which I don't think everybody wants to do, or we need to give her time to be able to do some presentations, as she's already working on all of the topics that we discussed in the priority workshop. She's already working on, so it's not a surprise that any of those were priorities. But everybody's going to get to see it. I just framed, and she's been revising it too, to prepare a presentation on those priorities to be able to bring us up to speed, and that would have baseline data in it. So then when we set new goals for the next year, we could use that baseline data in our new goals. So I'm envisioning, in my head, I feel like we're looking at like a February timeline for evaluation and setting new goals in April, because when we set new goals, then those goals can then feed into her goals for the following year with the whole district. So try to bring these goals together since we have so many goals. Just work kind of structure to help us reimagine what goals are.
So that's your idea for the first formative evaluation?
Well, for the first formative, I think I didn't get that far because I felt like we've kind of been talking, and so she's going to present, and then I was thinking formative and summative pretty quick so that we could set new goals, and then the new cycle would start like April, May-ish, and we would shift from a December, January to an April, May timeline. Because I feel like that feeds into district improvement plans better than a December timeline. But I haven't talked to her about this whole thing. So let's just when you say like, what's my ideal? Well, my ideal is not everybody's ideal.
No, that's just what you're gonna propose in that timeline.
Right now, I have the document written so that the steps of the timeline are there with no dates. Because it also feels like we've got a short term and we've got a 1-year term. And we need to get this short term one to where we all feel comfortable, and then we can look at a 1-year cycle.
Well, and I think this section has, it doesn't have a great deal of specific dates or anything. So I think the section as written allows for us to redevelop the plan, and if we need to do it, because it has interim performance evaluation, annual evaluation. The only thing that I would question is in the third bullet point, each board member will bring the completed individual evaluation to the meeting, and then we'll collaborate on the final document. If that's something that we need to change based on, your comments from there.
Yeah, I think that a concern in the past was that we wanted to make sure that the collective document was representation of the whole board. However, sitting in a room for 5 hours and wordsmithing statements may not be the best use of our time. So, one idea to consider, and Dr. Roach, I think you said that this is how you've seen it done, potentially.
So you would all fill out your individual one, and it would, the board president would take them all and put them together, but I would get copies of all of them, individual.
And then
So
we
that
would,
it wasn't, trying to manipulate a system or, and also, some people have concerns that may not, there's always a thing that everyone has, and it's nice to know what that is. Because, and it may not be in those 4 goals, but you would like to see this. And so it helps you work towards that one, so we're all working together. Does that make sense? We're simpatico. Yeah.
and the collaborate, the version that would be put together, the whole board would still see again. So it's not like I would put it together and then hand it to her. I would put it together, share it back to you all. We'd still have a meeting, we'd look at it, and at that point, people could say, yes, I think that looks good, and then we would move forward, versus it being the president does it and nobody else knows.
I'm wondering if on bullet 3, if we should just take out that second sentence for now, knowing that if we do change the way we're taking that tool and using it, that would cause us to have to change this.
Remove the evaluation.
Just the second, no, just the second sentence from that.
Bullet. Because if we do that, then it's speaking to the fact that we have a tool that the board will use.
And it says each board member may complete,
The collaborating.
But we're not defining what we're gonna actually do with it.
I'm good with that. I mean, is everybody else comfortable with deleting that statement? I think that was a statement that was added on the last go-around to address the concern from the previous go-around.
But if there's a possible change in the way it's gonna happen from now on, then maybe we should implement that.
Well, and I would think that in the idea of getting this set and approved by the October board meeting, that we would approve as is, and if we change from the retreat, the process to where we decide this needs to be, somebody could send it back to the subcommittee or the 2 board members, add it to the agenda, and we would just this section, adjust it. Is that?
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay. I think those were all the sections. Did somebody point it out if I missed any specific that, from a full board discussion?
Cover them all.
Randy, Carolyn, and specifically, did I,
Yeah. we
okay,
covered them.
did I capture it all? Okay, and then, like I said, the remainder of the document is a modification of, a compilation of everybody's comments and of the committee reviewing those. And there was one thing that I did find today, and I highlighted it. Hang on, let me. And this would be on page 18. about elections and board elections. It's item number B in the first paragraph, when reconvened in open session, it says the current board president will preside over election. I think we were changing that to superintendent, right?
We took that away.
No, but this is if the board president is no longer on the board because we've already sworn in.
Then it's the vice president.
Okay, so it should say vice president.
The current vice president, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Will preside over the.
because right now it says to start the board election, officer elections, the current board president. Well, if the board president is no longer on the board,
So it would
we
need-
don't have a president, you know.
It would need to stay the current board president and then say if the current board, if the board president is no longer on the board, the vice president will preside. Unless we just always want the vice president to preside.
And the
Well,
same
you might be in the
officer.
same situation. The vice president could be no longer on the board.
I also don't think, on B, that first sentence, something's not right. So the board officers.
It's missing words.
Yeah, there's missing words.
Wait,
B.
It says will preside over the election, so the board.
oh, okay, yeah, I see, okay.
So is there more after officers, or I'm trying to figure out
Before,
what
so the
that-
board
Were the
officers.
elections of the board officers?
Oh, of the change, so.
Yeah,
So
I,
it should be,
of,
So,
yeah,
So then wouldn't it be if the board president is no longer in office,
the presiding officer will entertain
the
nominations.
presiding officer will? Because automatically the presiding officer would be the vice president, if not the vice president, it would be.
so instead of the current board president, just say the presiding officer.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Whoever,
This is in the
whomever
first
that
sentence.
might be.
This is in the first sentence.
Second,
Where it says the current board president will entertain nominations.
But I think it's gonna apply to your first sentence too. So I think,
oh, and, actually, that second, okay, in section A, in item A, where it, says, yes, the superintendent, that needs to be another line item, because that's outside of close, that's back in open session. So then we delete it all, I mean, I think you delete that sentence, that's where the confusion is.
superintendent? Yeah, the superintendent will ask for any nominations. It's
Yeah,
gone
it's gone completely. And that wouldn't happen in
in close.
session. The other item, the board will deliberate the duties and qualifications. Would y'all be comfortable with changing that word to discuss? I mean, deliberation is not a closed session item that we can do.
Yes.
Okay, so then just to clarify on B, it should say when reconvened in open session, the
presiding
presiding
officer.
officer will preside.
Will preside.
I guess we'll use the word preside twice. And then the presiding officer will entertain nominations.
We could just cut all of that and say will preside and entertain nominations. And get rid of a whole bunch of words. Then take out a line.
Which I don't know
That
how
doesn't
you
help
would
with
do
11
that.
pages.
It'll get you that last bullet one,
Yeah.
the extra sentence.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if there's any specific sections from our proposed changes that anybody wanted additional information or had questions on, or if you submitted any changes, or after this discussion, if you want to submit any, recommended, just need to know if you have any additional questions or, need information from us. This is a discussion happened at the subcommittee from that.
Just ask once over on the new board member checklist on page 25. We still have the, under getting started,
removing those.
removing those two.
Okay, we did remove community calendar from the actual operating procedures. I think we probably just missed it on the list. Okay.
It's also in the table of contents.
And the table of contents have enough to be-
Yeah. And one of my comments that I had made is that I wanted, and y'all let me know, I wanted to see the whole document move to a numbered outline situation, so we aren't referencing, page 3, the third paragraph down, first bullet point, that it's, Article 1, Section 2, Item A. I just think that simplifies and less confusion going on. Is that,
That makes sense.
okay?
When are y'all meeting again so that we know when we have to have any suggestions?
In the morning at 8.
At Waffle House.
Yeah, at Waffle House.
IHOP, please.
We don't have anything on the calendar yet. We'll have to coordinate that. But if we have an October, hang on, I can't do dates in my head. I got to look at it on a calendar. I mean, if we're looking at the October 5th is our board meeting. So we would have Randy, Carolyn, Brian, Dee, y'all. I mean, we would need to do something within the next 2.5 weeks.
27th,
Does it have to go to legal still? It has to go,
Oh, so
so it may not be feasible. and that's-
to do it on October 5th. Then I would say I think we need to, can we reset our schedule and then push this to the November meeting? Is everybody comfortable with that? Does that meet all required? Okay. Okay, so how about we'll coordinate on our schedules and then we'll get you a comment deadline back.
Sounds good.
Does that work? Anything else?
Just thank you
Yeah, thank
for the hard work.
Randy and Carol, it was,
You did a good job of summarizing and encapsulating what we all were talking about.
thank you,
Thank you for that.
thank you. Well, I didn't want to misrepresent what y'all said.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
You did a good job.
Cass, you had a question on one of the other sections.
Oh, I did on page 14, board meeting preparation.
Oh,
Just wanted to, this is something that's been swirling in my head and want to make sure we get clarification from the board's perspective is when individual board members submit questions about the agenda, are those responses, should those responses go to the whole board or just to the individual board member?
I think when it goes to the whole board, maybe me and Caroline have the same question, and we didn't realize we asked it. Maybe we both understood something different, So I think it's best if we all get the questions, and we all get, because then we'll see it from a different lens as well. Oh, I see what she's asking for. Does that make sense? That's been my perspective.
And wasn't there a case where we were presented all of those for some reason? I can't remember who was some. Yeah. And it helped us answer the preparation for the budget. Remember we all had so many questions on that?
Yes.
And that really, I mean, it cut my phone call off because I was able to read all those.
Yeah, so I do think it's helpful. It helps probably not for us to repeat the same questions to them on 7 phone calls on the Wednesday before a meeting.
Like maybe you asked a question on the
On the
day
list.
before that could have already been on the list.
Yes.
Right.
But you didn't know that somebody else asked it.
I do think it's helpful. My only issue is like the 72 hours situation turnaround. They're not reading that agenda till Sunday night. That the 72-hour turnaround before you make that email is maybe the day of, or the day of the board meeting.
When we
So-
get it from
Back
administration.
from the administration. Now, usually I realize they're much faster than that, but it would have to be. We're only gonna have 5 days to have the agenda in our hands prior to the meeting.
Well, I think it also makes it so that, like, we need to get our questions in by 8 a.m. Monday morning so that they can start working on them. Because you're right, like, sometimes we get the responses, especially if it's collective responses, you would anticipate the collective responses would be like the day of. So we just need to be prepared. If it's, because I don't think we want them to like have to spit out an email every time. Okay, one person asked a question, okay, let's send that one. The other person, let's send that one. I think
I'm
we're,
definitely all for efficiency, but I feel like if 7 of us are asking the same questions over and over again, that's just those questions in by Monday at 8 a.m., so they have a chance to make a document if they want and respond to all of them. And then we have the phone call on Wednesday. I'm just trying to think of the most efficient way to use everybody's time, especially since they're taking the time to call all of us on the Wednesday before. That does take a lot of time. And if I'm asking the same questions Ziliana and Randy are asking, then that's just wasting everybody's time. So I just think there's a more efficient way to go about this for all of those concerned. And no one's complaining to me, I'm just speaking out
I
loud.
think we get together and develop that,
If that was even possible. And I know
and
there
we
might be
kind of,
some
I mean,
it's
that way we'll say, here's the items, here's the date that it goes, what it's sent, here's the meeting, and so I think we can do that. It'll help.
Okay. I don't think we need to put it in the document. I think we just need to let it
But
be.
I will also say, during the presentations, I always make notes, and I have several questions that I will include the responses from presentations, like, what is the, like, I'll give you an example from Randy's exit survey. What is our evaluation practice? Because that's why people were saying they were leaving. Well, I think that's something we probably all need to know. So just even
That
after
too.
that.
Yeah, exactly.
And
That
those are
too.
the kinds of things we can put in the report, Friday report or memo, whatever.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Because there
I
are those
also
questions
think
come up.
if we're gonna do something where there's a document that is all of the questions with the answers, if we can get a heads up of like, you can, especially if it's the day of the board meeting, you can expect this, or we get a text that say, hey, that message has gone out, because I will say, for me, it's hard knowing I'm working all the way up into running home, changing, and then coming here. Like, I caught emails that came out like 3 or 4 o'clock, and I'm like, I didn't see those before the board meeting, because I'm not at a place where I'm at my computer, I'm trying to get to the meeting. So if that becomes the process, it's fine, but if I know I need to look for that, like, I can include that in my planning of my afternoon.
But if we get the agenda early, then maybe make a deadline 8 o'clock Sunday night, whatever makes it easier for all parties. And then to get that information back out to us, we have it by Wednesday. So when you're calling us, we're not asking you the exact same questions that everybody else has done.
We'll get together.
Anyway, this is just a thought. But I think that would be just efficient.
Okay.
Was that your only?
Yeah, that was my only.
Okay. And then, so, Brian and Dee, if y'all will work on the schedule from November meeting, back legal review, all of that, and then coordinate our calendars. Good luck. For a meeting. And then we'll know the deadline for them, please.
Thank you.
Okay.
In the interim, we should read that 11-page document and highlight our own
Yes,
ideas.
noted. Carolyn, noted.
Because I don't want to sit there for another 45
Yeah.
minutes or an hour trying to figure out what we think is good.
I think Brian's already
Yeah.
sent it.
Yes.
Hey, what?
It's in your email. address.
Yeah, it's our,
Oh, is it?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so it's ready to go.
Okay. Good.
It's ready to go.
Good. Thank you, Brian.
That is your evening reading now.
Oh, sure.
Do they have that on audio book? That's
I love
the.
that. Yes. Can you check into that, Ms. King?
All right, any other questions or comments? Thank you, everyone, for your participation, and I think we are moving in a great trajectory altogether. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our agenda, and we are adjourned at 7:04 p.m. Oh, yeah, and then we
Or maybe they could just print it in a 16 or 18 font.
don't leave without a picture for Ranch View.
Okay.
And
Mine
Edith.
will, version. I'm gonna open my version.
Yes, I have done.